one and only Mr. Jason Hartless?
Yes, it is.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. How's it going?
Good, man. Yeah, dude, you know what? Like, as I read about you and learn about you, like, the more I read, the more I'm blown away by you.
Oh, thank you so much.
So, like, how the hell do you start drumming professionally at 5 years old?
Well, my dad was a professional drummer in the Detroit music scene, around the time I was born. And, so he was always, playing, and the drums were always in the house. And, I, about 6 months old, I would just kind of crawl down in the basement and just start banging away. And then really by the time I was 3, my dad started, bringing some of his, musician buddies over to kind of jam with me because I started getting a little, more serious and actually playing the kit. And by the time I was 5, I was playing, professional gigs with an all-adult band around Detroit, doing covers. And, my dad is a salesman by trade, so he's one of those guys that's always networking, always talking. And, when he was playing, his band used to tour a lot with Ace Frehley back in the early 90s. And
okay.
So he ended up striking up a great relationship between Richie Scarlett, Ace's guitar player for many years in Ace, and so much so that when I was born, my dad made Richie my godfather.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, I started playing cover gigs and such. I used to do like mountain songs. So I was a big mountain fan. We used to do Nantucket Sleigh Ride and, some Alice Cooper tunes and stuff like that. But when Ace rejoined Kiss in the mid-'90s, Richie went to go play bass for Mountain. So I was always a big fan of Mountain. I always loved Corky Lang and just idolized him, and hence why I was playing Mountain songs. And my dad took video of me, playing Nantucket Sleigh Ride, sent it to Richie, and Richie ended up showing it to Corky, and Corky ended up calling my dad and was like, look, I want to work with this kid. And from the time I was about 7 to about 10, Corky, who's living in Toronto at the time, would drive back and forth from Toronto to Detroit, and we would sit in woodshed in the studio, and that's kind of the introduction into my career.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
Thank you.
So, I mean, there's really been nothing else, like, pretty much on your radar other than music.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my entire life I've always engulfed myself with music, especially, nowadays with, I'm touring and session musician, but, I'm also running, record labels and publishing companies, and I go to school full time for it. So it's like every single thing I do is, music related in some form.
Yeah, like that really, really, I mean, blew me away was that part where I was reading how you go to school and all, and you're looking, to learn the business side of things, and you also involved in running your own label. Like, it's not just you looking to be, the drummer or a musician. I mean, you're looking to really learn the ins and outs and all aspects of the musical business.
Absolutely. I mean, and I've always looked at it, and in this day and age, you have to be business-minded, in order to be successful. And, really my occupation as a drummer is I'm not a drummer. I'm a studio and touring musician. So I play with, whoever the hell needs me, and, whoever hires me for, whether it's a rock artist or a jazz artist or a funk artist or R&B or ska artist, whatever, so making sure that I don't limitate myself to any other, situations where I get a call to do a gig and they're like, yeah, I can't play that. So
right.
Making sure that I can always, step up and do the gig that's required. But, growing up, the lucky thing I had was my parents were very supportive and they kind of knew what avenue to take in terms of my development. My parents never once told me, like, go down and practice. They wanted me to find the love for the instrument myself. And it's funny, the few times that I got in trouble, my parents would even ground me from playing drums. which was way more devastating than, grounding from playing video games or whatever,
Right.
And but what that did was, it definitely helped me, learn the love and find the love for the instrument and my craft. But with that being said, the one thing that my dad always pushed on me was making sure, I was business minded, because he's a business guy. Now me, I'm naturally a very quiet person. I can sit and not talk for hours. My dad, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. He can talk to a tree for 4 hours and never run out of something to talk about. But what it did was it allowed me to, he pushed me to in pressure situations to where, I had to talk in front of people and things like that, so that when time comes, that I got to, work my career on my own, that I'm able to do, that sort of thing.
Wow. Now, do you play any other instruments besides drums, or are you just always stuck with drums?
I just always, I play almost all the percussion instruments. So when I was in high school and middle school, I was in every single music ensemble that they offered, from symphony band, jazz band, concert band, marching band, drumline, percussion ensemble, drum for the show choir. So that was the time that I was kind of like, all right, I'm just going to only focus on this and try to master as best as I can all these different things. And
right.
I can BS guitar and bass when I'm teaching students, drum students, but other than that, I only concentrate on playing drums and percussion.
Wow. Now, how about you also drummed with Joe Lynn Turner?
Yeah. It's funny with Joe, because I'm kind of like his designated Midwest United States drummer. With him, he's got musicians all across the world that when he's playing gigs in certain regions, he hires those musicians, so he doesn't have to fly people all across the world with him. In his situation, it works out perfect. So anytime, he does like Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Ohio, all those areas, I end up getting called to do the gig. And it's fun because, with Joe, you're spanning, stuff from Rainbow and Deep Purple and Yngwie Malmsteen and Joe solo stuff. So you're covering a lot of different drummers, like Cozy Powell and Bobby Rodinelli and
Right.
Ian Pace. So it's definitely a diverse playing style when I do that gig.
That's cool. Now, how about your gig right now is playing with Ted Nugent, which has to be kind of like kind of wild for you in two different aspects. Where one, you're being from the Detroit area, and he is the Motor City Madman, so he is like a god there. And two, Ted's like 70 years old, and you're in your early mid-20s. So is it like kind of a weird, like a weird thing to be playing with a guy almost 3 times your age?
Not really, because again, I've grown up playing with all adults, and I was only in one situation in my entire career that I played with, kids my age, and it was, like when I was 11 years old or something. But I've always played with adults, and with Ted, it's like last week, him and I went out to lunch, to some barbecue place and just bullshitted, because him and I are, we're musicians. We do this, and we're on a peer level, and so working with Ted and being from Detroit is great, because he's like a folk legend here, and
Sure.
And it's fun, and it's funny because when I was little, I was probably 10 years old. I studied with Tommy Clufetos, who drums for Ozzy and Black Sabbath currently. But when I was taking lessons from him, he was drumming for Ted Nugent.
Okay.
So it's kind of funny how things end up working out to where I end up years later taking the same gig that one of my former teachers had.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Now, how about too, like, you said you went to lunch with Ted last week. When you're playing with a person like Ted and Joe Lynn Turner and Quickie Lang and Richie Scarlett involved and all. Like when you get together with these guys, is it almost kind of like going to rock school? You know what I mean? Where they just sit and talk to you about stuff they've learned through their career and passing their wisdom on to you.
Absolutely. I mean, I always love hearing old war stories, and Corky Lang. I always call him the Forrest Gump of rock, because that dude was always in the right place at the right time and knew everybody and played with everybody. So the stories that he tells are just legendary. And same thing with Ted. Being from Detroit, I always hear these stories about these iconic venues in the late '60s, like the Grandy Ballroom and the Easttown Theater and Cinderella Ballroom, and all these just iconic, unbelievable lineup bills that happen. Where the Who and Ted Nugent's Amboy Dukes were playing a high school in 1967.
Right.
Just crazy stuff, and hearing those stories from Ted is what I always love. Love having conversations with him about, because you always hear rumors, you always hear third, fourth, fifth hand stories, but to hear it from the actual person that was there is just incredible.
That's awesome. What's your favorite song to play with Nugent?
Honestly, all of them. Every single gig is just a highlight. But I've never gotten stage fright in my entire life. Even my first gig with Ted, which, funny enough, was the first time I ever sang on stage, which was in front of 15,000 people at a festival in New Hampshire. And I just, it's just something that was so natural to me, performing and being on stage in front of people, that I've never gotten nervous. But there are times where I kind of sit back and, I'm playing Stranglehold, and it's like, holy crap, I'm playing Stranglehold with the guy.
Right. Oh, that's so freaking awesome. So now, like, with the whole school and business thing, like, how much? I mean, that's gotta like take up a lot of your time. I mean, so you're probably like, when you're not in the studio or on the road doing stuff, you're probably like attached to a laptop or something.
I'm right now in between meetings as we're speaking. I go nonstop when I'm home. When I'm on the road, that's like my vacation time, because I got drum tech that sets up all my stuff. We don't sound check with Ted, so it's one of those things where I got time to actually relax. But when I'm off the road and I'm working in the studio and doing my homework and running my business, it's like I go nonstop.
Wow. Like, what made you like? Want to do a label? I mean, with the way the music business is right now, with music sales and stuff like that. I mean, that's kind of a big mountain to tackle in this world right now.
Well, I didn't found the label, but I had worked with the label for many years as a musician for various artists of theirs, and they've gone under a couple different names over the years, and when I started my degree at Berklee College of Music for music business, they were kind of like, well, the owner came to me and he's like, well, the label's kind of defunct. No one's been working it for the last 2 years, so, do you want to just kind of, take it over and just kind of maintenance it? Don't, we're not really thinking about spending too much money, but, maintenance the label, make sure that everything's working, and because it was all catalog releases that the label had. There was no development, artists or any actively working artists on the label.
Okay.
But they did say, like, look, if you come to us with a good idea, we'll definitely, talk about it. And, when I came on as a partner, it was Prudential Records only. And since then, I've been partner for the company a year and a half, 2 years. And we've since grown that to Prudential Music Group. We founded a sub-label called Rouge Records, which focuses on vinyl reissues, and we've also started Prudential Publishing, which houses the publishing catalog of both Prudential Records and Rouge Records. So it's what became, we'll just kind of maintenance this label has turned into, large projects and developing artists, and we're distributed through Sony, so having major label distribution is a major key for us. And
Sure.
With our vinyl reissue company, that was like really the big thing that spurred the label getting rejuvenated, because there's such a high demand nowadays for vinyl. And I've been a vinyl collector for many years, and what I always enjoyed about it is you get this kinesthetic quality to listening to music that you normally don't get with on your laptop or iPhone or whatever digital listening device you have. And even CDs, you didn't really get that as much, but with vinyl you're getting this kinesthetic touching. You're feeling this giant thing. You're feeling artwork. You're physically placing a giant disc. You're physically putting a needle onto the record. The artwork you can hang on a wall, you can display. So there's so many different physical aspects to listening to vinyl, on top of it just sounds unbelievable, that consumers want it again. And I think on top of, the past generation that had vinyl when they were younger, wanting to relive, and rebuild their catalog of vinyl collections, but also the millennials, my generation, that, they noticed that, they've grown up, with an iPod in their hand, and that was how they got their music. So now they want to try this new thing that, physically having something. So
Right.
You're definitely seeing it in this industry, and I feel like it's one of the few viable areas in this business that's actually growing in terms of profits with physical music. Like the first and second quarter this year, vinyl rose 19%, which is just unbelievable.
Oh, no.
And on top of that, being headquarters in Detroit, Jack White, about a year and a half ago, opened up a beautiful pressing facility right in the heart of downtown Detroit. So we were one of the first third-party companies to get in there and partner with them. So they manufacture all of our stuff, which is great because, it's 15 minutes from my house. So if I need to go check on something, I can just pop right down there. And, on top of now we're able to brand, the Jack White Third Man Records pressing name along with our brand, really helps.
That's awesome. The whole vinyl thing, it really is just so shocking to me. I mean, I grew up in the 70s. I was a kid of the 70s, and, so that's what I grew up with was, especially those Kiss albums and just the artwork on them, and it just meant so much to me in the 70s and 80s. And when it went away, it was just like, wow. And now that it's back, it's mind-blowing to me that it's back and people are just so into it again.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and on top of, you're now getting superior sound quality because, the technological advances in the industry in terms of, recording and mastering has just elevated. So now you're getting vinyl, if it's done right, that just sounds 10 times better than the original. And the originals already sound great as it was. So, if you have a great turntable and a great sound system, I personally think vinyl is the most superior, medium for listening to music.
Yeah, there's just something about that hum, that vinyl hum.
Absolutely.
Now, do you see yourself, say in 5-10 years, do you see yourself being more on the business side of it, or do you still see yourself behind the drum kit?
Honestly, I take it one day at a time, because in this business you never know who's going to call, and the next day could I get a call from a major artist that is going to be putting me on the road for 3 years. I just never know. So being able to stay active in the moment and always working and building up my repertoire in every single aspect of my career, whether it's as a touring and studio musician or as a business executive, and by no means do any am I looking at my music business career as a fallback to when my phone stops ringing as a musician. But what it does is, when I'm not working as a musician, I'm able to still keep working in the industry and stay active. So it's basically a real win-win situation for both aspects of my career.
Cool. Now, something too that really stood out with me when I was reading about you was that you are, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're clean and sober. Like you're not out doing the whole rock and roll party thing. Like, and you like really kind of preach that lifestyle, especially to like the younger kids.
Absolutely. I mean, I've grown up in this industry and seen a lot of great musicians, that I've looked up to, either ruin their careers with drugs and alcohol or, flat out kill themselves. So, seeing that very early on in my life, I was, was very impacted quickly. And, so when I became older and started doing drum clinics and stuff like that, and I noticed that, younger kids kind of looked up to me, it was definitely something that I felt like it was my obligation to just kind of get this, message out there. The biggest thing that I always find is, the film and TV have always Hollywoodized, what the music industry is. And one of the big things that it's done is made the music industry, look like you have to be a partier and you got to be a crazy, person to live the quote unquote rock and roll lifestyle. And it's not true at all. The only way you're going to survive in this industry is being professional as possible. It's sad because I know a lot of great musicians out there that, they still try to live this mentality and their professionalism just goes down the tubes. And guess what?
Yeah.
They're out of a gig in 6 months.
Yeah, it's funny because that's when I read that. I mean, I was like, first of all, I was blown away, but then I was thinking to myself, like, I wonder if you saw, situations growing up that really made you steer that way, really opened your eyes to things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's type of things that I try to stick to myself, but I did witness a couple situations that definitely impacted me, and and it helps playing with a musician like Ted, who's been clean and sober his entire life. So
right.
And that's just a coincidence that my boss ends up being a very straight edge person as well. But honestly, I've worked with a lot of people that that enjoy to drink and dabble in their drugs and whatnot. It's the music industry. You're going to have it. But as long as it doesn't affect the job that I got to do, they can do whatever the hell they want. So,
right.
But just making sure, I kind of express the message to, young up and coming, inspired musicians, to just kind of keep their head on their shoulder and, stay positive with their choices.
Nice. Very, very cool. So what do you have coming up now? You have stuff with Ted coming up or studio stuff or?
Well, we just got off the road doing our tour, and with Ted, we only tour in the summer, so we do June, July, August, and then we're done for the whole year. But we got a brand new record coming out that we tracked earlier this year. I believe it's coming out sometime in the fall, and I'm really, really looking forward to the reaction that fans have, whether they're Ted Nugent fans or classic rock fans, have on this album, because it was recorded very, very old school. We had 2 weeks to go down to Waco, Texas earlier in the year to track this thing. And, the plan was that we were going to sit in a room for about a day or two, and Greg Smith, the bass player, Ted and myself, we're going to sit and work on the songs and have Ted show us the parts and stuff, and then spend each day, the rest of the time we were there, recording one song per day. Well,
okay.
We sat down to track the first song, and Ted was just feeling it, so we ended up tracking the entire record, drums, bass, and rhythm guitar, in 5 hours.
Holy hell.
So what it was able us to do is that, we were now still there for a week and a half. So now we were able to, spend the rest of the time concentrating on the rest of the guitars, guitar solos, vocals, and also able to experiment and change different things, because now we're sitting and, listening, and we're absorbing the music, every single day. And, typically in this day and age, in a session, it's get in and get out as quick as you can.
Right.
We're here. We already had the time booked, so now it was like, all right, well, let's try some things. Let's experiment. And, the result is really, really great, and really the reviews that I've been getting from, friends that I've played and other people in the industry that I've played the record for, they've been like, there was something that on this record that was able to capture, Ted's sound, iconic sound from the 70s. And, Ted even said it himself. He's like, some of these licks are very reminiscent of, his earlier work in the 70s.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear it. Cool. So, where should everybody go to get hold of you, touch with you, if they want to hire you?
Well, I try to stay as approachable as possible, and I'm on all the social medias. Being a millennial, I'm not that social media equipped, but I still are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and all that crap, and then of course JasonHartless.com. I tour dates and records I've played on and news and whatever. But again, I always try to be the one that I can always be approached. If a young, inspiring musician has a question, I always make sure that I answer it and kind of do my part in giving back.
Awesome. Well, Jason, this was really nice talking to you, man. Congrats on all your success, and looking forward to that new Nugent album. And hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure talking.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Awesome. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.